The Disney company is gigantic, and its films are loved by billions of people around the world. However, you may not know that some of its most famous titles have origins in real events and unusual stories. Here are 5 Disney films that might surprise you with their origins, some of which wouldn't have been appropriate for children's films if they hadn't been changed. When the film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was released in 1937, it became a huge success, marking the beginning of many of the Disney princesses we know today. We are all familiar with the story. Snow White lives with her jealous stepmother, who orders the huntsman to kill the princess. Unable to commit the act, the hunter leaves her free in the forest, where she finds shelter with the 7 dwarves. When the evil queen discovers that Snow White is alive, she disguises herself as an old woman and offers Snow White a poisoned apple. When she bites into the apple, Snow White is considered dead and remains motionless until a prince finds her, kisses her, and brings her back to life, living happily ever after. It's a charming story, but the original version has a rather dark alternative ending. Written by the Brothers Grimm in 1812 and first published in German, this version maintains most similarities with the Disney film, except for the moment where Snow White is poisoned. Here, the prince doesn't kiss her to revive her. Instead, when he trips over a branch in the forest, he causes the poison apple to fall out of Snow White's throat, bringing her back to life. The story continues darkly when they organize a big wedding, inviting all the kings and queens of the land. The evil queen accepts the invitation without realizing that it is her stepdaughter's wedding. Upon arrival, she is forced to wear a pair of incandescent shoes and dance until she drops dead. This is punishment for his attempt to kill Snow White. It's a rather disturbing ending to a story that is generally considered children's, and it's understandable why this part wasn't included in the film. The Disney film, Pocahontas, was undoubtedly one of the most controversial of the Disney princess films, mainly because it was based on a true story, but was altered in such a way that many believe it took historical liberties in portraying Pocahontas, distancing her from enough of the facts to adapt it to a children's audience. In the film's plot, Pocahontas is a young Native American woman, the daughter of a powerful Indian chief. Her father wants her to marry a native warrior, but she falls in love with a British captain, which displeases her father. Things get complicated when the British captain's companions try to steal the Native Americans' gold. However, this narrative is very different from the real story of Pocahontas, the daughter of a tribal leader. Born around 1595 with the birth name Mitaka, Pocahontas was later given the nickname meaning spoiled or naughty child. She was part of a tribe located in Tidewater, Virginia, where her childhood witnessed the arrival of the English in search of the New World, resulting in many conflicts between the English colonists and the Native Americans. During this time, Captain Smith, an English soldier and explorer, was captured by Pocahontas and her tribe and faced execution. It was then that young Mitaka, just 10 years old, threw herself at Captain Smith to prevent his death. Although it was unlikely that there would have been a romance between the two, as portrayed in the film, Mitaka was later captured by English settlers, where she met John Rolfe, a tobacco planter. To secure her release, she agreed to marry Rolfe and was renamed Rebecca. This was the first recorded marriage in history between a European man and an American Indian woman. After 2 years of marriage, John Rolfe and Rebecca traveled to England, where Rolfe used his wife as a symbol of peace and goodwill between the English and Native Americans. During this stay, Mitaka again encountered John Smith, the captain she had saved from execution, but she refused to speak to him and turned her back on him. Unfortunately, while returning by ship to Virginia, Mitaka fell ill and was removed from the ship in Gravesend, England, where she died at the age of 21. There were suspicions that her death was caused by poisoning, but this was never confirmed. It is surprising to think that the film, when watched, is only loosely based on real historical events. The 2010 Disney film, Tangled, tells the story of a baby princess named Rapunzel who is gifted with magical healing powers. She is kidnapped from her crib by Mother Gothel and taken to a secret tower, where her magical hair grows unnaturally long. As she grows up, Rapunzel becomes curious about the outside world, especially the bright light she sees every year floating in the sky beyond her tower prison. She plans to escape the tower with the help of a local thief, embarking on an adventure that reveals that the lights in the sky are lanterns released by her parents each year on Rapunzel's birthday. She falls in love with the thief after resurrecting him with her powers, and eventually they get married and live happily ever after. The film version differs significantly from the original story, which begins with a lonely couple living alongside an evil witch named Dame Godhel. The pregnant neighbor spots a Rapunzel plant in the witch's garden and asks her husband to steal it so she can eat it. After being caught by Lady Godhel, he begs for her life, and the witch agrees to let him go on the condition that he delivers the baby as soon as it is born. The witch takes the newborn baby, whom she names Rapunzel, raising her as her own daughter. Rapunzel grows up with long golden hair, and at age 12, Lady Godhel locks her in a secret tower. Her hair grows so long that, when the witch visits her, Rapunzel throws her hair over the tower so that Lady Godhel can climb up to her room. One day, a prince hears Rapunzel singing in the tower, and they meet and fall in love. They plan to run away so they can get married. But Dame Godhel realizes something is wrong. She cuts Rapunzel's hair and throws her into the forest to fend for herself. So she uses her cropped hair to trick the prince into thinking she is going up to see Rapunzel. When he reaches the top and finds Rapunzel gone, he jumps from the tower in an attempt to kill himself. He survives, but the thorns pierce his eyes, leaving him blind for months. He wanders aimlessly in the forest until one day he hears Rapunzel singing and is reunited with her, and she restores his sight. As for Lady Godhel, in a fit of rage, she loosens her hair and is trapped forever in the tower to die. While the original story is interesting, it differs considerably from the film version and would not be as suitable for children. Many consider the 1940 film Pinocchio to be the best Disney ever made. Told through the perspective of Jiminy Cricket, the story tells how woodcarver Geppetto creates a puppet called Pinocchio, wishing he would become a real boy. One night, after seeing a shooting star, Pinocchio comes to life the next morning. When persuaded to join a traveling show while on his way to school, Pinocchio ends up being locked away by the show's owner when he tries to return home. Rescued by a magical fairy, his nose begins to grow when he lies about his adventures. Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket return home, only to discover that Geppetto has been swallowed by a whale while searching for him at sea. Determined to save Geppetto, Pinocchio dies trying to free him from the whale's belly, but is brought back to life by the fairy, finally becoming a real boy. Although a classic of Carlo Collodi's original work, the original story is much darker, portraying Pinocchio as a disobedient and miserable boy, often subjected to torture and abuse. Carlo initially planned a tragic ending for Pinocchio, but the editors insisted on a more optimistic outcome, introducing the Blue Fairy who saves him from death. Despite the ongoing torture in the original stories, the Disney film does not portray these dark aspects. Winnie the Pooh, an adorable teddy bear, was designed by English author AML and later adapted by Disney into a series of shorts that featured his friends: Piglet the pig, the kangaroo, the rabbit, Roo, Tigger, the owl, and the one and only human character, Christopher Robin. Together, they embark on several adventures in the 100-Acre Wood, but it's surprising to discover that some of them have their roots in real characters. In 1925, A. Milne was inspired by a bear belonging to a soldier sent to London Zoo, while he himself was leaving for the front in France. Christopher Robin Milne, Milne's son, was a frequent visitor to the zoo and had a special affection for the bear, whom he named Winnie the Pooh. This affection from his son inspired Milne to create the iconic yellow bear we know today. Therefore, Winnie the Pooh was based on the bear and Christopher Robin on Milne's son, Christopher Robin Milne. As much as the adventures of Winnie the Pooh and his friends bring us laughter and fun, their characters are believed to have a depth of meaning. Although never confirmed by the creator, this is a widely accepted theory that makes us think. Furthermore, there are those who suggest that the characters have traces of mental disorders. For example, Winnie the Pooh is often associated with a number of mental disorders. His carefree and dreamy nature, along with his tendency to ignore rules, suggest a form of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Additionally, his obsession with honey and willingness to risk everything for it indicates, to some, impulsiveness with obsessive fixations. Piglet is thought to suffer from generalized anxiety disorder, with his chronic nervousness and low self-esteem contributing to his halting speech and irrational anxiety. The owl appears to have dyslexia, as he spells in a confusing and incorrect way. Tigger cannot control his constant jumping, displaying an extremely impulsive nature. Despite this, others are attracted to their sociability but are at risk of getting into trouble due to their behaviors. Some see this as a classic sign of ADHD. There is evidence that Kanja suffers from social anxiety disorder, being an overprotective and obsessively organized mother, which limits her son's autonomy. She tries to care for Tigger in the same way, although she cannot control him. The rabbit, excessively organized and obsessed with order, raises suspicions of OCD. He, or the melancholic donkey with a pessimistic outlook, seems unable to find joy in life and shows signs of depression. Finally, Christopher Robin, with his vivid imagination and stuffed animals as companions, is seen as the creator of all the characters, representing his own feelings. Some speculate that Christopher suffers from schizophrenia, but this would not be unheard of in children's films. Although many associate Alice in Wonderland with a drug trip experience, this has never been confirmed by the creator. Maybe it's just an exaggerated interpretation, or maybe Milne intentionally added complexity to the stories. Regardless of opinion, none of this dims the brilliance of these wonderful Disney films. I hope you enjoyed the video and see you next week for more news.